Welcome to the show, God's Love in Action. We're glad you could find time to join us again on this particular episode. My guest today, Mboya. You are all under one roof, but most importantly, you are a doctor.
Yes.
You are a youth leader. You are a musician.
Yes.
The list is endless.
I'm actually proudest about being a husband and a father.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I didn't.
You're good.
Yes. So without spending a lot of time, because I know your introduction can take 30 minutes, tell us briefly about yourself and what you do currently.
I'm a medical doctor by training, and so my current station is within Nairobi County, which is the capital city of Kenya. And here I'm the medical officer in charge, heading a facility called Kibera South Health Center. Yes, and maybe alongside that, musically I'm the lead for the Instruments a cappella vocal band, which is an Adventist music group that sings gospel a cappella music. Yeah, I'm the founding chair and the general manager for the group.
Go on.
It's a long list though, but I'm also a trustee of the Africa Prayer Breakfast Trust, which is the umbrella body that brings together the Kenyan nation for the National Prayer Breakfast. That eventually happens once every year, but there are so many weekly meetings that we do all the year round. I'm also a trustee of the Africa Youth Leadership Forum, AYLF, which is an organization that brings together university student leaders in the whole of East Africa. That is Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. We have a presence in Ethiopia, and South Sudan is only beginning, but we stretch all the way out to Rwanda and Burundi. And we bring university student leaders together around the leadership style and ethos of Jesus.
You see, when I told you this guy's introduction can take us 30 minutes, you thought I was joking. And I know you're not even halfway. But let me stop you at that. So, how was it growing up? I know most of the things we do today, most of who we are today is because of the experiences we went through growing up.
Yes.
How was your childhood?
Thank you for that question. I would say that when you ask me that, it really throws me way back. I'm the last born in a family of 7. So growing up, I hear that our family was well off. And around the time I was being born, my father was having a stable job. My mother was still an elementary school teacher until she retired, of course. And around that time, my father was transferred from Kisumu, which is a town where we grew up, the western part of Kenya, around the shores of Lake Victoria. And when he was transferred, my father wasn't perfect. So unfortunately, the trips to Kisumu were wearing him down. He would come every week. Weekends, he would be home. And then the visits started dwindling, from every week to twice a month, maybe once a month, once or twice or 3 times in a year. Then he quit coming back completely. So unknown to us, he had actually moved on and remarried. Unfortunately, our stepmother who came into his life took him for herself. And so he went away from our lives, and it was basically upon my mother now to bring up the 7 of us, which wasn't easy. Life immediately took a turn. Something I didn't notice because I was much smaller, but my older siblings, having lived through the life where there was enough, suddenly had to experience a shift from even neighborhoods. We had to change neighborhoods because my mother's elementary school salary for her wasn't enough now to take care of and sustain our lifestyle back then. Yeah, so life changed. Our father totally moved on. The rest of us had to make do with what was there. I remember food on the table was such a problem because, normally food would be tasteless until when mom's salary ran out. Because when her salary ran out, that's when now she would send us to the shops, to get the better tasting food. The grains, the rice and the beans and the occasional chapati on the table. But that was all on debt. So she basically lived with from debt to debt, raising us up. Being the last born, I would say, and being the smallest around when this thing was happening, I didn't realize the difference. It took a greater hit on my siblings who saw the difference. And I would be the one who was being sent to the shops, so I would innocently go and stand in front of the shop and tell just yell at the shopkeeper, "Hi, Mama sent me. Would you please give us this and this and this?" And then the shopkeeper would look and say, "But she didn't pay for the last ones." Then out of innocence, I would say, "But she'll pay. She said she'll pay." So the shopkeeper would just give me stuff, and then I take them back home. My siblings were embarrassed, so couldn't do that. So that was growing up. And basically, because she couldn't sustain all of us through, some of my siblings had to wait out, especially those who would finish class 8, they would wait out a bit until the others go through Form 4 and then they go back to school. But when it got to my turn now to join high school, because I performed really well in primary school, my mother, being an elementary school teacher, basically taught me how to read and write at home and at school, literally. So I always say I'm lucky to have had both worlds of a teacher.
You went to the school that she was actually...
Yes. She was actually one of my class teachers in primary school. Yeah, so I finished primary school, passed really well. I was one of the top students in our zone. I was then admitted to high school. I was called to Kanga High School. Unfortunately, my mom couldn't pay that fee. So one of my uncles decided to volunteer and pay my fee. He actually took me in. I stayed with him in his household for about 1 year. And I would say that first year in his house, when I was in Form 1, was my first interaction with a male figure. Yeah, that was now the first time I was experiencing a father figure in my life. And at first it was, I used to make, I always say that I used to make my rules, because my mom was so sweet, she would reason with me, when I make mistakes, she tells me, "Sit down there. Do you think this is right?" And I would be like, "But I did, nini." So we'd reason. And so now having a male figure in my life threw me off balance. I didn't know how to behave, how to, when I'm wrong, how to, face him. But then he really mentored me. And one of the things he told me was he was going to pay my school fees throughout high school. He gave me the assurance. He told me, "No problem. Even if you mess or do anything, I'll pay your fee all the way to Form 4. But," there was a but, "if you don't pass well to join university and a government scholarship, we are done."
Wow.
So it was both a threat and a motivation, because I moved from the day school where I was while staying with him. He sent me to a boarding school to improve my grades, and I performed much better. I eventually went to Agorosare High School, where I finished my Form 4. And he took me through the process, paid my fee. God bless him. He was such a pillar in my life and a point of direction. When I was made the deputy school captain in Agorosare, he called my mom. He was like, "Are you sure this boy is going to study with all these responsibilities put on his head?" So my mom came to school, spoke with the teachers. The teachers were like, "No, we have chosen him to be the deputy school captain, and next year he's going to be the school captain, and that's it." So I'd say that was my path now for leadership. And even in school, I was serving as a chairman of the Adventist students movement in school around that time. So just mixing both with academics was something that was a bit of a headache, but then I thank God that I was able to pass despite both.
And it's interesting because the things that we go through, especially you going through, of course you say you didn't notice much change because of the age and all that, but as you grew, it started making more sense to you.
Yeah.
And one would think that such things would collapse you, would actually make you not even concentrate in school, but here you are, performing at your best and all that. How do you think that experience shaped who you are today? What influence really did this kind of environment have, as negative as one would think it was? It probably built you.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, now that you say that, I remember, for instance, when I was in primary school, there were times when the school management would change the school uniform. And then I would end up being the only student, like in the whole school, who still has the old uniform. So there are times I would be sent home, and yet my mother is a teacher in the same school. So such moments were tough. But then I would compensate by, diving into the books. My mother was very encouraging. She was serving in church. She still does. And so she would take me with her to church. I would be encouraged by her from watching her and how resilient she was through all this and just learning from her. And then when my uncle came into my life and held my hands, of course, he put in a small threat about education and how important it was for me to really focus on that and grow. Looking at that, looking at my surrounding, I would say it hardened me. It taught me that education for me was going to be a key and that I needed to focus. And it was also a way by which I could now mentor my colleagues because I became a pillar to those around me. My friends would learn from me. I would put them down and talk to them. If I realized they were missing the mark or starting to get influenced by other negative groups, then I would call some of my friends out of such groupings because I already knew where such a path would lead, and it would only lead to destruction. So I would say that going through what I went through was one of the foundational things for me because it has eventually set me and put my feet on firm ground.
And that's even actually apparent because I remember a few years back when you were actually one the leader of the Adventist movement in Kenyatta University, which is a public university with a lot of Adventist population.
Yeah, at that time it was a church that had a capacity of about 3,000 in
one
sitting.
University.
Yes. So after high school, of course, I joined Kenyatta University, where I was pursuing the desire of my dreams. I always wanted to be a doctor. So I was called into Kenyatta University to pursue medicine. And when we were interacting around that time, I was already the chairman of the university's students' church, where I was chairing the building and investment committee. So this was the first public university in Kenya to give a piece of land to Adventist students to build a church within the university compound. So it's quite something that was very rare, unheard of, in fact. But then as the chair, working together with the union and the division officials who eventually started funding us, motivating comrades, like we used to call ourselves, comrades.
Yes.
Motivating comrades on how to fundraise and applying the best methods for fundraising towards building that church. That was key. And actually that's based on my success in leading the church construction. Yes. That's how the comrades started telling me, you should run for the students' body politics.
Yes.
So that's how eventually I ran for the students' body president.
And you won.
And I won. It's called Kenyatta University Students Association. So I was the president of the 70,000 students in the university. Leading in church and leading in the students' body politics was now, for me, the grounding mechanism. Because the church, for some interesting reason, decided to retain me.
Oh.
Yeah, they said, okay, you're going to lead the students' body, but you're also going to lead us here in the church. So I was doing both in terms of the building. So the chaplain was, always by my side. I was mentored. I would say I wasn't alone. I walked that journey with really strong people around me.
Good. Your life story is actually very interesting. And right now you are again involved in many other responsibilities, other than the fact that you have a facility, a medical facility to take care of which you're heading. You also mentioned earlier on that you spend quite some time assisting, working with underprivileged, people in the community to try and provide medical assistance and things like that. Tell us briefly about that. Yeah,
so when I graduated from medical school, one of the things that struck me as I was doing internship was that there are a number of people who'd come to the hospitals late based on various reasons, whether it was that they could not afford going to hospital or that they didn't have the knowledge and the know-how. And so when I finished my medical internship, I started a group where we teamed up with a number of doctors. We sold the idea to them. And one of the things we do is medical camps. And we target areas that are far off the nearest health centers. And our target is to the Masai Mara, where we collaborate with the local authority, media houses, the local language radio stations, who help us to promote these medical camps. And we also partner with pharmaceuticals, who together with us now take the teams out there. This particular area is really close to my heart because we offer services to people, most of who cannot otherwise afford, these kinds of services. So whether it's in dental, we take care of their teeth. Whether it's in eyes, we take opticians there with us. They're checked for their eyesight. Those who have glasses are advised on how to change them. We do all that. And if there's a need for referral to any of the big hospitals, we write referral letters and they're able to move on to the next level of treatment.
When was the last visit and how was the experience?
The last one was actually last year. We saw about 3,200 patients. These are Maasai, so most of whom were being brought to us. When they just hear a medical camp is coming, they come in droves. And some walk all the way from Tanzania. There we treat so many people, so many ailments, different age groups. It's just something that warms your heart, especially when you treat them and give them the medicine and they tell you, thank you, my grandchild. It's so warming. A lot of us take for granted that we have access to small things like tablets, Panadol for pain relief. And reaching out to them reminds me of my journey and reminds me of how people have given into my life. People have walked with me to get me to where I am. So I just want to walk with others, especially now in my area of specialization, which is rare and has a lot of need. And it's an area where I can directly touch people. So it's just giving back to the society.
How is the work around this particular facility in Kibera, which you are currently in charge of?
The facility is located right in Kibera slums. Kibera is one of the biggest slums south of the Sahara. I think it's documented to be the largest slum south of the Sahara. And our facility specializes in seeing patients with chronic illnesses. Most of our patients come from the slums themselves, though the nature of services we provide are so advanced that we have referrals from other facilities, not necessarily within the slum. And we have a comprehensive care clinic that sees patients of HIV and AIDS on treatment and follow-up. They're giving medication. We have proper counseling. We have enough experts in that line, nutrition and all that. We are a center of excellence in tuberculosis treatment. We do gene expert, which is a very upgraded way to test for the tuberculous bacteria. So for that, again, we receive so many referrals from other facilities and they send patients there. We also have a maternity center that sees about 250 mothers thereabout delivering every year. Within the facility, we see about 250 deliveries in a month. So in a yearly basis, you can calculate what that is, like 250 times 12. That's an average. But on a day-to-day basis, we see about 300 patients who walk in through our outpatient clinic. As it is right now, we have about 4,000. It's about 3,770. Those are the latest figures as I have them of patients we are following up for HIV. But since it was built up to now, we have seen about 13,000 patients who are living with the virus. Some, of course, transfer from the facility when they are moved to other regions for their jobs. We also have a gender-based violence center, which is exemplary. It's one of the best in the whole of Nairobi. And we see a lot of patients. But that is also because of where we are based. We are right near the slum, and the slum is also associated with some of these gender-based violences. So we see that. We attend to patients of rape, we counsel, we treat them. It's a whole list of services. I'm not sure if I can paint a good picture of what we do.
It's good enough. When I was growing up, I didn't know much about what I wanted to be, but I knew what I didn't want to be.
Please don't say you didn't want to be a doctor.
I didn't want to be a doctor. One, because I couldn't stand seeing someone suffering or someone in pain. And I think that's what you guys are exposed to every other day. And how do you manage that? Because, man, it can be tough.
Seeing fellow human beings at their points of suffering is really not a very good experience. Occasionally, some of our staff have to go through counseling, of course, especially when they lose a patient that they didn't expect they would lose. And we're also responsible for preparing family members in the event that we see the prognosis, like that is the outcome, or we see that a patient has been brought to us. Some even die on their way to the hospital. And so as the healthcare providers, it's also our duty to counsel them. So we see people at their points of pain. But on the other side, we also see people when they're happy, like when a new baby is coming into the world, it's so much joy. When you do cesarean sections and you pull the baby out and show the mother, and hey, the mother is so happy, we see both extremes, and that's the joy. When I look at my own journey and desire to become a doctor, I remember one of my brothers was asthmatic, and his asthma was so severe that it would put him down like for 3 days, like 3 days continuously. He'd been to hospitals, wasn't receiving medication that he felt was improving his condition. So he got to a point where he would just say, no, I'm not going to the hospital. And he understood his disease so much that he knew that this is only 3 days, I'm going to be down for 3 days and I'll be up. So growing up, he was much older. He's our second born, and I'm the last born out of 7 siblings, so you can imagine. And so just stare at him and, try and help, but he would send me away because I was of little help. The best I could do was to go get him his drugs, bring them there. Then once he's taken them, I would still sit there and stare, and he would look at me and, just send me away. But that was one of my initial motivations to get into medicine. And I'm happy that right now I'm his personal doctor. Wow. So we manage his condition. We thank God that we only give medicine, and God is the healer. So whenever he has his attacks, we are in touch. I tell him, use this drug. Sometimes he uses a drug and tells me it's not working. So I tell him, oh, then let's change to this other one. And he says, yeah, I'm improving. So
good.
It was a motivation for me.
Given your story, God has really done a lot in your life. You're even a recipient of many awards. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I think the latest award I received it in the US, in Oklahoma. It's called the Dr. Henry and Viola Kirkland International Humanitarian Award. This is an award that I was given both for the leadership roles that I was playing in our country, Kenya, but also for the leadership roles I was playing in the field of medicine, and especially on the humanitarian side of taking medical camps to people who are needy in the Masai Mara, in Samburu, and all those other areas. We've also done medical camps within the city, even with our group, The Instruments. This particular award is interesting because it comes with a monetary funding for it that would be able to take me through my specialization. I would actually like to specialize in neurosurgery and continue in my endeavor to provide services to people who otherwise cannot access them. Yeah, so that's my desire, to do neurosurgery, and we have very few neurosurgeons in Kenya.
Yes.
Yeah, so I want to specialize in that area and take those skills to the people.
Second award.
I was the chairman of all university students in the country. So with that position, I was awarded a position into the management and the affairs of all university student leadership activities in the country. More of a permanent honorary member of the Kenya University Students Organization.
Life has had its own fair share of, you know, challenges, we must say. And it's not a reserve of, you know, any particular person. We all go through ups and downs.
Yeah.
But I think what I'm getting from your story, most importantly, is to know where we want to get and put God first in all that we do. How has God, you know, been God in your life, regardless of all these, you know, other challenges and the successes that you've experienced in equal measure? How have you experienced God at a personal level as we conclude this discussion?
At a personal level, I would say I'm very prayerful. And it is something that I would say my mother taught me indirectly, because being the last born, I would watch her pray every night, you know, every day in the morning. She would ask me to join her in kneeling down and praying. Whereas when I was much smaller, it was more of a bother, you know, like you really want to get on with your sleeping, but you're here being asked to kneel down and you pray, and the prayers were really long. Sometimes 30 minutes, we're just kneeling, and I'm there asking, Mom, not again. But all these things are vanity, and there's more and greater peace in service and in serving the Lord, that when we focus in serving God, He gives us all these other things. So I would tell people out there about my story. For example, the Lord has always shown His light. And in life, may I say that much as the Lord will shine a torch, because that is what I would say my revelation, is that He has promised to be good to me, and that He will always shine a light upon my path. But then it's my path, so I have to put my boots on the ground and walk it. So He'll shine the light and show me the way with the light, but I have to put my own boots on the ground. For anyone out there struggling with any issue, if there's anything they're going through, there's always a lesson. If something is hurting you somewhere, you know, maybe something is not going right, whether it's at home or at work or at school, there's always a lesson. These things don't happen to us in a vacuum. They happen to us to teach us. So it's important to stop and look at the pain so that you can see the lesson through the pain.
We're so grateful, and we thank you for your time coming to share your story and testimonies with us. And we're actually praying for you that God will indeed lead you and continue shining more light in your path.
Amen.
Thank you so much. We wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
Asante sana.
Asante.
But dear viewer, that's all we've had time for. Thank you so much. See you next time. God bless you.